Good afternoon, everyone. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about how to create or import data frames into R and RStudio. So before we get to doing it, we should talk about what exactly a data frame is and how it differs from the objects that we've talked about so far. So I've created a simple little table here in Excel, continuing the example of we're pretending we are recording people's track and field times or scores, right? So the first thing we talked about was how to create and store information in a variable. A variable is a bit like a single cell in Excel, so it can only store a single value. So if I were to try to store this value in a variable, I might name it something like Alice Jump, and I would assign it a value of 12. If I wanted to store all of the jump heights, I would be creating a vector, right? A vector is a list of values that all have the same data type. So I would name this vector jump, and it would have these 4 values. A data frame is a bit like the whole table. So a data frame consists of several vectors, each of which only stores a list of things with the same data type. But the data frame, since it can have multiple vectors, can store multiple data types, right? So if this is a variable, this is a vector, this is a data frame. So let's go ahead and start creating this data frame over in R. So to get started, we'll create the names vector. So hopefully this is review from last time. To create a vector, we put the name, we do less than dash like the arrow, we use C to combine the list into this vector. When we are using strings as values, we need to remember to put them in parentheses. So I'm going to put Alice, Bill, Cindy, and Dave. Then, since we're working up in the source panel, I don't hit enter, I hit run. And you can see we've created an object called names. It's a vector with 4 values. It is a character type vector. These are the 4 values. Right. Hopefully that's review from last week. If I want to record the jump heights, I will record jump and list those out. Oops. And click run. And if I want to record the times for the 100-meter dash, I will do those as well, just the same. And we'll go ahead and run that. Okay, so now we've created the 3 vectors, each of which correspond to one of the columns in our data frame that we want to create. The way we combine vectors into a data frame, we can't just use C because that would just try to put them all together into a vector, right? The way we have to do it to create a data frame out of multiple vectors is we use data.frame. So the syntax for this is fairly similar, but let's go ahead and name this. We'll call it dfgym to denote that it's a data frame storing, gym class information. And then we use data.frame, and then we can input the vectors that make up this table or this data frame. So names, jump, time to 100-meter dash. And we'll run that. So now you'll see we've created a data frame object. It has 4 observations, that means 4 rows, of 3 variables, that's 3 columns. If we want to view our data frame, there's a couple different ways we can do that. We'll work down in the console here. If I just type in its name, dfgym, that'll print it to the console. If we want to do that more explicitly, we can use print. A lot of objects you can print to console this way. And that'll print it to the console as well, and you can see it there. If we want to open it up as a table in the source panel, we can use the command view. Do note view is capitalized. And you'll see that opens it up as a table up here in the source panel. You can also sort either ascending or descending by clicking these little arrows here. So that's useful. The other way you can open it as a table is over here in the Environment tab. You'll notice next to the object there's this little icon that looks like a table. If we click that, it'll do the same thing. You see down here in the console it ran the same view dfgim, and that gets run. So there's plenty of different ways that we can view our data frames. So that's how we can create them ourselves. If you have larger data sets, it can be a bit tedious to do so manually like that. So let's also go ahead and look at how to import different file types as data frames. So below you'll find a link to this web page. This is a website called Kaggle. They host a lot of publicly available data sets. So this can be a good place to go if you're looking for sample data to try out different tools or things that we learn. The iris dataset is sort of one of those classic learning datasets that people like to use. It records a bunch of instances of samples of irises that people found, and it stores things like how long their petals were and what species of iris it was and that sort of thing, right? So this will be linked below. You click download and you'll be able to download this file as a CSV, comma separated values, comma delimited file. To import this as a data frame within RStudio, we use read.csv. So here we use data.frame to manually put together different vectors into a data frame. Here we're going to use read.csv to read a CSV file. So just like before, we give it a name first. I'll call this one dfiris. We use the same syntax to put the file that we're reading into that data frame object. And we use read.csv. And then you'll want to navigate through your file explorer and find the exact file path and name. So if you've just downloaded it, it's probably in your downloads folder, or you might want to create a folder to store your different data sets that you're going to use for this class or these examples. So I have already written the file path so that I don't have to sit here and type it out and probably make a mistake. Oops. It does go in parentheses for read.csv. So I'm going to paste it there. Oh, read.csv tried to be helpful and give me the parentheses already. Okay. Okay, and when we run that, that CSV is going to be read and then stored in the data frame object that we've just created. So over here we can see dfiris has 150 observations. That means 150 rows of 6 variables. So there are 6 columns of information here. If we want to view it, we can just write it in the console. And we can see that there's quite a bit here. This would be quite a hassle to write manually creating as vectors and then put them together, right? So it's much easier to use this command to import the data set this way, right? If we want to, we can also open it as a table and we can see it up here. So that's pretty cool. Now that we have a little bit of a bigger data set, we can also talk about some of the ways you can summarize or view different parts of your data frame. So if I just want to see maybe a little bit of my data set so I can see what's going on, I can use the command head to see the header. This is just the first 6 rows by default. If you want a different number, you can use a second argument to add how many rows you'd like to see. So if I type in head and then dfiris, I'll just get the column names and the first 6 rows of information. If I want to see more or less than that, we can do the same thing, but we can give a second argument after a comma, and maybe I want the first 10. And we can run that and get the first 10 rows. There are a couple different ways that we can do that. If I just want to see a certain column, we can use something called the accessor. It is a $sign, so I can say dfiris, then $, and let's say I just want to see the list of petal length. and then I type the column name, and when I hit enter, I will just get the values for the column name vector within the data frame df_iris. If I want to see just certain rows or columns, there is some different notation we can use. It is bracket notation. Let's go ahead and go back to Excel and we can talk about how this works. So if this was my data set and I wanted to refer to specifically this value, I could refer to it in a couple different ways. Excel uses letters and numbers, so Excel would call this C5. R is a little bit different. In bracket notation, we refer to the row and then the column. So this would be 4, 3. So let's go ahead and check that over here. dfgym 4, 3. And I get 12.1. Which was what we'd expect to see here, right? This is the 4th row. The R isn't counting the column names as part of the table. So 4th row, 3rd column, right? If you want to see a certain range of rows or columns, we can do that with a colon. So let's go back to df_iris. Maybe I want to see the first 10 rows, like we did before with the head function. I can do, in brackets again, I can do 1 to 10, comma, and I'd like to see all of the columns, so I'm not going to put anything there, and I'll hit enter. So now I'm seeing the first 10 rows and all of the columns. Right, so in bracket notation, it's always what rows you'd like to see, comma, what columns you'd like to see. If you leave either of them blank, it assumes you want everything. If I want to do the opposite, I can go to df_iris, and I could say, we'll see all the rows, so I'm just going to put a comma, skipping specifying rows, and we'll do 1 through 3. And that gives me all of the rows, but only the first 3 columns. If you want to, you can get very specific. I could say, I want to see rows 10 through 15 and columns 2 through 5. And that'll just give me rows 10 through 15 and columns 2 through 5. So bracket notation lets us refer to any particular value within our data frame or any range of values in our data frame. You just refer to it by first what rows you want to see, comma, and then what columns you want to see. And if you leave either of those blank, it'll assume you want to see everything. So the other way that we can import a data frame, first go ahead over here to packages. This is where we can add different libraries to our studio. The ones that are here by default are ones that are built in essentially, or you have already downloaded them. And go ahead and scroll down to read Excel and make sure that's checked. I don't remember if that is by default or not, but go ahead and check it if it's not. That's going to give us a easier way to import datasets from Excel. So then if I go to Files, and then I click this little ... symbol over here, that's going to open up a folder or a file explorer, and you can navigate to any file. You can open any Excel file, or you can also open CSVs in this way, and you can import your datasets that way. So I'm going to go ahead and grab gym.xlsx. I'll close it so that doesn't cause any problems. And I'm going to say I want to import the dataset. When you do so, you'll see a little preview of what you're currently about to get. You can name it whatever you'd like. I will name this, I'll just leave it gym. That's fine. You can specify if there's a max number of rows you want. You can specify if you want to skip some number of rows. If it's not on the first worksheet, you could select a different one here. You could do a specific range. You can specify whether or not the first row is a name row for column names. And you can specify whether or not you want to open the view of this data frame right away. For this example, we're fine with the default options, and you can even see what it's going to do. So first, it's opening the library read_xl. Then it's creating a data frame with the name Jim. To populate that, it's using read_xl and giving this file path. Then it's opening up a view of Jim. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import. And what we'll see is now we have Jim, which is exactly the same as df_Jim. This is just showing a different way to do this rather than building it manually. And Jim has been created. It has all of these values. And it's been opened up as a table here so that we can see it. So those are some of the different ways that you can create data frames. And also different ways that you can view different parts of your data frame within R. Hopefully that's clear enough. That should be everything you need to know to start getting data frames into the software. In the next tutorial, we'll start talking about different things that we can do with our datasets once we have created or imported them.